Good morning. Thanks for joining our webinar today. My name is Casey Bonine, and I'm the Corporate Services Director for the Midwest Energy Association, and I also manage the Energetic Women Group. I have Shannon Anderson here. She's the Program Manager for the Utility Leadership Academy. For a few quick housekeeping items, are muted and will remain muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we, as the host, will be monitoring those. The speaker will be taking questions throughout the webinar and may be asking for some responses, so please make sure to select everyone or the host in answering the question. Today, and will be available on the Energetic Women website by the end of the day tomorrow. I would also like to sponsor for today's webinar, DTE Energy. DTE Energy is a diversified energy company involved in the development and management of energy-related businesses and services nationwide. Their largest operating subsidiaries are DTE Electric and DTE Gas, together providing electric and/or gas services to more than 3 million residential, business, and industrial customers throughout Michigan. Their gas utility businesses have each been in operation for over a century. DTE has also leveraged that wealth of experience and assets to develop a number of non-utility subsidiaries, provide energy-related services to business and industries nationwide. The active women's organization within the company and the active within Energetic Women since it started. We are getting excited for our 9th annual conference in June 14th through 16th in Houston. We have an incredible lineup of speakers for the conference, and we are excited for everyone to connect, network, and learn. The early special is $25 off and ends on April 1st, so be sure to get your registration in. Now I will turn it over to Shannon.
Hey, I'm Shannon Anderson, Program Manager, Utility Leadership Academy. We're excited to be here this morning. I want to let you know that the Spring Leadership Boot Camp still has a couple openings, literally two openings. I'm working with someone to sign them up. So if you're interested, it's over 3 months. It's a virtual program. So you've got 4 private webinars, online learning opportunities, assessments. We've had participants from most of your utilities on the call today, and we've received rave reviews. This is the 5th boot camp that we've done, and it keeps getting better and better. So please feel free to reach out to me if you're interested. It does start, the first webinar is March 16th, but there's definitely still time to register. We got a couple upcoming webinars, one in March on coaching in the workplace. I know that Stacy is working on one for Energetic Women in April, and that is to be determined, so keep an eye out on your email for when that gets released. And then we got one in May as well on emotional intelligence and executive development. Okay, so those are our upcoming events. I'm super excited to bring to you today Brenda Clark Hamilton. Brenda has actually facilitated a webinar for MEA in the past. In May 2015, she did Leading Others Through Organizational Change. That was very well received. She's a dynamic keynote speaker and workplace trainer who offers fresh perspectives in leadership, communication skills, team building, customer service, and offering one's best self to bring to life relationships and career. Brenda comes from a background where she's worked with energy companies like Alliant, as well as nurses, and we're just really excited to have Brenda today. Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Shannon. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, thanks to everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. I know you all have very busy work schedules, very busy lives, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us over this hour. I will try to make it a valuable hour for you where you get some practical take-homes. I think of it kind of as taking a time to hit the pause button in your busy lives, to take 1 hour just for yourself, because the focus of this webinar is clearly on, as women, what do you need to be at your best to handle the many responsibilities, important responsibilities in your life. So again, I want to say special thanks to MEA, Energetic Women, and to DTE Energy, our sponsor for this webinar. I think that Shannon and Stacy hit most of the housekeeping details. I will pause at a couple times during the program, actually at the start of point 2 and point 4, to specifically ask you to type in the answer to a question that I will ask you at that time. And I encourage you to type in. It's always fun to read what people have in the chat box. Shannon will be fielding those throughout, so I encourage you to do that as well. We'll have time at the end. If you have questions or comments or wise thoughts, we would love to hear them. The other thing you have on your screen right now is just my contact information. I love hearing from people after a webinar or a speaking event. It's always a blast for me, so I'd love to hear from you. And as Shannon said, I do workplace training and I speak at conferences and conventions, working with all industries. I've been in 16 states, and on Tuesday I fly down to Birmingham, Alabama to work with the Alabama Bankers Association to add State 17. But I understand we have people from all over, 200, a packed house today, so let's get rolling. Thanks again for having me today and for joining me. I want to start by having you think of yourself for a moment and brag for a moment. If you're in a room by yourself, just answer to yourself, or if you have someone next to you, take a quick 10 seconds here and tell the person next to you or tell yourself one way in which you believe you are a superhero in your life. So just take a second here. One way in which you're a superhero in your life. Our presentation is, I know I'm supposed to be Wonder Woman, but I don't have any bullet blocking bracelets. And this little graphic might apply to some of you. She says, I'm not saying that I am Wonder Woman. I'm just saying that no one has ever seen me and Wonder Woman in the same room at the same time. Somebody remember, I am 50 years old, turned 50 this year, and I remember as a child watching Wonder Woman, the TV show, with Linda Carter in the 1970s. And one of the features of Wonder Woman's attire were these bullet-blocking bracelets. And what she could do was, no matter what bullets coming her way, she would just hold up one of her wrists, and the bullet would deflect right off of her and protect her. And one day I was thinking about that, and I thought, wow, when I think of women and all the different bullets that have coming up at us in our lives, wouldn't it be nice if we had some bracelets just to hold up and protect ourselves from those bullets? And let me put a few bullets that your typical woman we are dealing with from time to time. Multiple responsibilities at work and home, too many of expectations often set upon by ourselves, difficult people, daily aggravations, deadlines, credit card bills, moody teenagers, gossiping coworkers, a heavy workload, piles of laundry, dirty diapers, dishes in the sink, company coming for the weekend, of course, hormones. Sometimes if you feel like this, that with the multiple responsibilities, for the sake of self-disclosure, I am a wife of 25 years, a mom to 3 young adult sons, and a workplace trainer. You know, I own my own business. And I think a lot of we women with our multiple responsibilities feel like this little guy saying, everybody chill out, I got this. There's an expectation that no matter what chaos is going on at work or home, that we have the answer. We can take charge of the situation and straighten everything out. But I feel there can be a danger of that. I speak to women one-on-one after a speaking event in the corner of a conference room or over dinner or having coffee. They'll describe that, you know, fighting off bullets, we can be strong for quite a while, but over time, sometimes we get to feeling exhausted. It kind of wears on us. Women will describe themselves as feeling a little bit burnt out, overwhelmed, feeling physically spent, emotionally drained, spiritually empty. And this last one is always said with a certain level of sadness when I hear women say this, since that I've lost myself, that somewhere along the process of, you know, becoming a wife or a life partner or mother or whatever in career and volunteering, that somehow I lost who Brenda is. I'm not sure who she is inside of that anymore. I often think of it with our stressors like this. If I had a glass of water, I'm broadcasting from northern Iowa, but if I could hand you virtually a glass of water right now and say, please hold this up for me for the next minute, I'm sure most of you would say, no problem, Brenda. How about for the next hour? Okay, not ideal, but I'll hold the water glass. What if I said, I want you to hold it for the next 9 hours? And I think a lot of us are like that with our stressors, that we hold them up. We don't take time to sit back and focus on ourselves and what we need. And it becomes a little bit too much over time. So I think of this next 50 minutes as just focusing on you, setting down that glass for a while and focusing on what you need to be at best for all your responsibilities. So I want to start with a wonderful quote that says, close your eyes and imagine the best version of you possible. That really are. So of any part of you that doesn't believe it. And the oh-so-wise Maya Angelou, I would like to be known as an intelligent woman, a courageous woman, a woman who teaches by being. This was a picture of my mother, a couple pictures of my mother, Louise Clark, who's 81 years old. And, you know, society has a lot of things to say about women and what is beautiful, but this was the best way I knew to describe this beautiful woman inside and out. Beauty is quiet confidence. It's touching others' lives with your unique gifts. It's that feeling of being comfortable in your own skin. To provide you here in the time we have is 4 bullet blocking strategies that to help protect you from the stress, to keep you vibrant, to keep you uplifted, to keep you rejuvenated, to keep you peaceful. So that's where we're headed. And again, if you have comments or questions, please chime in, and I'm going to ask you a question in a few minutes that I'll ask one and answer to. Let's start with point 1, though, which is on create a strong mindset. I want you to think of what is your mindset most days. Many of you may be familiar with the work of Shawn Achor. He is a researcher, and he's done a lot of work at Harvard, and he's written 2 best-selling books in the last 5 years that are getting a lot of press and I think very well received due to his research on happiness. One is called The Happiness Advantage, and the other is called Before Happiness. And what Achor does is he trains business people around the world in how to inject happiness into their workplace, because he has research that backs up what a lot of us probably know intuitively, that happy employees are they're more productive, they tend to get along best with their coworkers, they better serve customers, they stay happier in the workplace and influence people positive and all that good stuff. So when Shawn Achor travels the world training business people, he shares with them a little bank robber hypothetical. I share with you that hypothetical right now and ask you the same question that he asked of his trainees. The hypothetical is this. Leave the webinar once you're finished here, and you decide to stop off in the bank. You walk into a bank. There are 3 other people in the bank. Walks in and fires his weapon once. You were shot in the right arm. You were the only person hit by a bullet. And let me repeat that. So you walk in the bank, there's 50 people in the bank, robber walks in, fires his weapon once, you're the only person hit. The question is, were you lucky or lucky day in the bank? Question of many audiences over the last couple of years, and I frequently hear answers like this from those who say you were unlucky. They, for Pete's sake, there were 50 people in the bank. Wouldn't we all look around and say, so who all was hit? Oh, me. Gee, how lucky is that? And those of us who say, you know, you were lucky that day, they'll give answers like, well, at least you were the only person hit. In your heart, it could have killed you. You can get a couple weeks off work and you have a great story to tell. At least there wasn't an elderly person hurt or a young child who may not recover as well as you. Well, Achor says, you know, there's really no right or wrong answer, but he says that our mindsets can tend to get stuck in life in either seeing things more as a glass half empty or glass full. He actually has a term for this. He calls it the Tetris effect. And if any of you recognize that game on the right, it's the little video game Tetris that was popular several years ago. It's, for those of you who haven't played it, what you have is you have that board, as you can see on the screen, and then off to the right are these different shapes. And shapes come down from the top of the screen, and as they're coming down, your ultimate goal is to fill in a whole horizontal row of the little cubes there to fit in one row or ideally 2 or 3 rows, and then they disappear and you get points and these additional shapes come down. So as the shape is coming down, you're always deciding, should I keep it as is? Should I flip it on its side? Should I move it to the left? Should I move it to the right? It's a very addictive game, Tetris. And as a matter of fact, Shani Kaur tells the story, real story. There was a man on a flight from Egypt to England in 2002, and the flight attendant approached and said, "Sir, it's time to turn down your phone. The pilot's going to be taking off shortly." She, a few minutes later, "Sir, if you don't shut off your phone, we're going to have to call security." "Sir, security is here." They moved him from the plane, and he spent 4 months in jail over the little disruption on the plane. What was he doing? That he didn't want to shut down his phone. He was playing Tetris. And of course, says if you play Tetris long enough, everything in your life will start to look like a Tetris board. He said you'll be walking through the grocery store, and you'll see a whole row of all of the frosted flakes in the cereal aisle. And they're all lined up on one row, except 2 boxes are missing in the middle. And think, wait a minute, what if I took the Honey Nut Cheerios from the row above, flipped them on their side, and took them over to the left and dropped them down? Could they fill in that empty space? So he said that we're like that in our lives. He actually calls it, again, Harvard researcher calls it Tetris effect. And he refers to it as this. Minds get stuck in a pattern of viewing things a certain way. If you want to impress your friends, you can refer to it as cognitive afterimage, which is the neuropsychologist's definition. Our brains very easily get stuck in patterns of viewing the world, some more beneficial than others. So we'd say that if you start noticing all of the negatives in your life, you kind of almost get stuck in that way. I liken it to one day, we refer to my programs as fresh coffee. And so I give out a lot of coffee mugs at conferences, just randomly to people. And they're full of chocolates and usually a pack of Starbucks Via in it. And so I have these coffee mugs. And one day I was ready to leave for a conference, and I was loading my car in the morning. And I opened up the back seat of the car to add one more bag. And my bag full of 4 mugs fell out onto the garage floor. The ceramic mugs, 2 of the mugs fell and hit hard and busted into 1,000,000 pieces on the garage floor, along with all these pieces of different types of candy, my Starbucks Via, everything. It's all over the garage floor, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm running late. Now, if I had said to myself at that moment, oh, no, this day is going to be terrible. This is how the whole day is going to be a disaster. This is how it's going to go. What I've noticed all day? Of course, I would have noticed everything that was going wrong in my life all day. Well, of course, there are people who actually get stuck on the negatives in their entire life. Think about it. You could probably name someone in your life who you feel like, oh, my God, are stuck on the negative in their life. And he says, and other neuropsychologists say the same, that your worldview will absolutely affect your energy level. You'll be more drained if you're focused on the negative. It'll affect your success, your creativity, your happiness, even your health. One little example for creativity, pulling one of those out to share an example of how that affects you. They've done studies through the University of Pennsylvania that show that if you have to do any tasks in your work or home life that involve creative thinking, problem solving, you will actually do better on those tasks if you purposely think positive thoughts first. They've illustrated this with little 4-year-olds, little preschoolers, where they say, Johnny, I just want you to sit here and solve this puzzle. But before you do, I want you to think about something that makes you so happy you could just jump out of your chair right now. And so Johnny's thinking about, after school I get to have a friend over, or we're going to Grandma's on the weekend. And then they say, go ahead and solve those puzzles. The children consistently do better in solving those puzzles if they purposefully prompt them with thinking positive thoughts first. Replicated it as well with physicians in making medical diagnoses when they're giving a hypothetical scenario of a patient. They do it more quickly, more accurately if they prime them with positive thoughts first. Let me put up a quote here from Tali Sherrill. His level of optimism in the first year of law school predicted his income a decade later. An increase of 1 tiny point on the optimism scale was worth an extra $33,000 a year. Optimists live longer, are healthier and happier, make better financial plans, and are more successful. I'm going to put up here a list, and you might say, well, Brett, I'm always positive. I'll put up some thoughts and see if you've ever had any of these negative thoughts pop into your mind. I think of how others have it better than I do. I often think of how unlucky I am. Mike clearly has favorites, and I am not one of them. He or she would not be happy even if I was the perfect employee. I think of how poorly my day is going. And I often think of how annoying people are. I like to just sit around and think of how people annoy me. Well, what can you do to block this? 2 quick strategies. As you see the little guy saying, ooh, that when that first sip of coffee touches your soul. Many of the positive psychology researchers would tell you to stop at any point during the day, and you can either think them in your head, or jot them down. 3 things you're thankful for that day. And it can't just be the same old, my friends, my family, and my health. Something like this coffee tastes amazing this morning. Sun is shining here. I spent some time with my nephew this weekend. A little thing. University of Pennsylvania took severely depressed people, clinically depressed people, and the only change they had to make was to log onto the computer once a day and type in 3 things they were thankful for. That's all they did. Type computer once a day, 3 things you're thankful for. After 15 days, 94% of these people reported a significant elevation in their mood. Now, did it cure their clinical depression? Of course not. But it's something we each can do to elevate our mood, to just stop, notice something you're positive, you're thankful for. As well, a course suggests that you start a team meeting in a while with a quick go-around of what's one reason you like working here. What's one success you've had at work or home in the last week? Something like that. And related to that, he says you should be your own spam blocker. He says, for instance, why do our computers have spam blockers on them? Well, it's to block any viruses, anything harmful that could come in and cause damage to our computer. We should do that with ourselves. When you look and you say, I'm just terrible at everything. I can't get anything right anymore. That's spam. It's harmful to you, and it's not even true. When you say, I'm just a terrible mother. Really, I seriously doubt that. But if you start speak those thoughts to yourself, it's going to be damaging to your energy level, your strength, and all of that. So for number 2, I have a question that I'm going to ask you to please type into your chat box so Shannon and Stacy can hear them, and in a few minutes they're going to read a few answers to me. The question is this. We'll talk about you behind your back, which sometimes people will do. They'll, talk about you behind your back and say Shannon is so-and-so. What are 2 to 3 words they like people to use to describe you when they're thinking about you? 2 to 3 words you hope people use to describe you when they talk about you. Like, do you want to say you're intelligent, you're optimistic? What are 2 to 3 words? And if you'd enter those into the chat box in just a few minutes, I'm going to ask Shannon and Stacy to give me some feedback. But I want to give you a few thoughts here on appreciating what is unique about yourself. The picture there is of my good friend Julie. We are very close friends, and in some ways we're alike a lot. She is a registered nurse and works with public health and is really very dynamic in career. But we differ a great deal in that Julie is an amazing homemaker. Her home is decorated beautifully. She bakes everything from absolute scratch. When we had children, their senior year of high school a couple of years ago, Jake and Corey, she would, when brownies were required that parents had to bring in something for an activity, cookies or brownies, I would be going to the store and purchasing something, or at the best, I'd have the pre-made cookie dough and just put it on a cookie sheet and bake it, where Julie would be up at midnight starting with the flour and sugar and the eggs. I used to get very of Julie because my kids would say, Corey has no idea how good he has it. If I had Julie as a mom and she was baking all of that good stuff. And you know that's a dangerous game to play, the comparison game. That's when we women say, she is so fit. That one, she looks like she's 20, even though she's 50. Or we say her house is impeccable. My God, her kids are all going to Harvard. They're brilliant. Or she's an amazing job here, and she went to Yale for grad school, and I just don't have anything. Or she has an amazing husband. Her life is perfect, and mine is not. What to say, that is a miserable, dangerous game to play. If we start comparing ourselves to other people, you will soon find yourself growing very miserable because it's a dangerous game. Like many people in studies show, you start looking at Facebook, and a lot of people get depressed because you're seeing the highlight reel of everybody's best parts of their year, and yet you're living in the reality that's going on behind the scenes. So do not play the comparison game. You want to focus on what is unique about you. So I'm not an amazing from scratch baker, but there's a lot of things I do really well. I have a lot of fun with my kids, and they appreciate my sense of humor or whatever you have. With that one friend, you know her, the fitness queen. And there's others among us. Oh, no, I thought you said pie and lattes. I encourage you to give conscious thought about who you want to be. So I'm going to have Shannon or Stacy, who's ever manning that. I'd love to hear some of the words that women have said who have chimed in on who they would like to be known as.
We're in a lot of words. We've got superhero, reliable, knowledgeable, determined, cooperative, beautiful, inspiring, caring, fun, creative, good listener, approachable, energizing, hardworking, friendly, passionate, creative. Some put down thrifty, hardworking, caring, compassionate, trustworthy, agile. She's really put together. So thank you for everyone chatting some great words, and there's a lot of commonalities here. So we've got some kindred spirits.
Thanks everybody for chiming in. I love the variety of words there. Of thoughtful, intelligent remarks about who you want to be as a unique individual. Thank you for chiming in, which leads me to this point about giving conscious thought to who you want to be. Marshall Goldsmith says that each one of us has 4 identities in our life, and we need to be aware of them. I'm going to tell you about how your words fit in here in just a moment. The first identity is that we all have is remembered. Remembered is what you remember about yourself as a child. Were you shy? Were you tomboy? Were you outgoing? Were you a bit of a troublemaker? Remember about yourself. Second identity is you reflected. This is what people have said about you in the past. You always were the good girl. Always were gathering a group of friends to get together. You always were causing trouble in high school. What people have reflected back to you about your past. The third one is your programmed identity. And to me, that's always a scary one because it's kind of what people have predicted for your future. I had worked with a group of Job Corps students in part of Iowa. That these are students who had been removed from their homes and their neighborhoods because of drug activity and violence and whatnot, and actually living on campus at a community college and working to improve their lives. And we were talking about programmed identities, and one young man said, yeah, my mom and dad were both addicted to meth, and dad ended up in jail. And he said, growing up, my mom programmed an identity for me of failure. She said to me regularly, you are going to grow up to be a deadbeat, good-for-nothing, druggy loser just like your father. Programmed failure. Thankfully, other kids are programmed for success. At graduation, we say, oh, honey, I can't wait to see what you're going to do. You're going to set the world on fire. Programmed. But this last identity is most important because it's about you now and your choices. That is your choice created of who you want to be from this day forward. I encourage you, those words that you typed into the chat box, to keep a list. I physically keep a list at my desk. I have it in front of me right now. And when I'm traveling, in my presentation bag, in my bag, my handbag, a list of who I want to be. And it says, I want to be loving, kind, joyful, genuine, encouraging, inspirational, creative. Why do I do that? It keeps me focused on who I want to be as a person, what I want my created self to be. I've often been known to, before I leave a hotel room to go out to speak in an event, I will stop at the door before I exit that hotel room, and the last thing I'll do after I've checked, do I have my car keys, do everything, is say, who do I want to be at this event? I want to be loving. I want to be genuine. I want to be inspirational. It focuses you on the path of who you want to be, not who other people might say you are, because none of that means a doggone thing. Create your own identity. Right. I'll make a quick comment on your personal board of directors. I think I've had a lot of women come up to me at a conference. I had one a few years ago, and she said, I heard you speak at a conference 4 years ago, and I need you to know that I know exactly who is and isn't on my board of directors, and I tell others that they need to do the same. What your board of directors is I want you to just picture in your mind right now a boardroom table. I want you to picture chairs at that table reserved for those people in your life you love and you respect and you admire so much the way that they live their lives. You give them an honored seat at your personal board of directors table to help you run your life. Who's at that table? For most of us, there's very few chairs around that table. Then what happens is when criticism from other people come at you about how you should or shouldn't be living your life, and you just ask yourself, does this person who's giving me this information on how I should live my life, are they someone who I would let sit on my personal board of directors table to help me run my life? Okay, maybe I should take into consideration what he or she is saying, but not, am I going to drink in this poison they're spewing? I'm just going to dump it out, not on my board of directors. And I find this gives me great emotional strength and resistance from those people who want to always chime in about you should be doing this or you should be doing that. So please keep that in mind. All right, my 4 points. Oh, also please stop the personal insults of yourself. I often think of women, we're so good at insulting yourself. Once in a while when you're saying, I'm a terrible mother, I'm no good with technology or whatever, to say, would I tell my friend that? Would I say that to her? Would I say that to my daughter? I would, so don't say it to yourself. Quote from Edwin Bliss, the pursuit of excellence is gratifying and healthy. The pursuit of perfection is frustrating, neurotic, and a terrible waste of time. All right, the third point I want to make, or the fourth, is to refuse to get stuck in a moment. There was a song that came out in the early 2000s called Stuck in a Moment by U2 or Bono. And in the song, there was two music videos created. And original one's a little harder to find, but it's my favorite, and it's of a football game. In a music video, they're of course playing at the music during the video of the football game playing out. It's a championship game, and they are tied, and it's near the end of the game, and the kicker has to just kick a field goal in order to win the game. And so everybody in the crowd is on pins and needles waiting to see if this kick is going to go through the field goal to win the championship. The words of the song, as Bono is singing them, are essentially this: got to get yourself together. Yourself stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. And repeats that: you've got to get yourself together. You've got yourself stuck in the moment and you can't get out of it. As we watch the game play out, the kicker goes to kick the ball up. It goes up, and you guessed it, it's down into himself. He goes through the rest of his life, as music continues, himself as a failure. When the chips are down, I screwed up. I made a fool of myself in front of everybody. Didn't have what it took. And Bono says you get yourself stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. What I want to say, and I frequently say this when I'm working with school groups, high school kids, but it applies to all of us, you are going to have mistakes in your life. You're going to have, quote, failures that you will learn from in the long run. You're going to have times when you're disappointed, when things don't go your way, when you make mistakes, when you screw up royally. That's a part of the human condition. Never get stuck in a moment. What you may be familiar with the name Doris Christopher. Doris Christopher is the founder of the Pampered Chef that sells the kitchen products. I read Doris's autobiography several years ago, and she tells the story of how in 1980, Doris had taken a couple years off a career to be home, and income was tight, money tight. So she said to her husband, "I'd like to sell a few kitchen products out of our basement." So Doris went to the market in Chicago, and the vendors were used to selling in quantities of 100, how many thousands of this spatula would you like? And Doris was walking through saying, I'd like one of this, and I'd like 2 of these pans, 3 of these spatulas, and they were getting rather irritated with her at the market in Chicago. And she said she saw amidst all the products a baking stone, what became the Pampered Chef baking stone, and I bet a number of you have one in your house. And she said, I saw the stone, and it just caught my attention, and I said to the vendor, "How do you bake on this thing? Do you degrease it? Do you change the degrees? Do you cook on this thing? It's fascinating to me." And he didn't have the answers, and he was getting real frustrated. And he finally said to Doris, "Why don't you just take this baking stone home?" And she's thinking, I get to be a secret kitchen tester of the product. And he said, "And you don't even have to return. Just never return. Just leave with the stone and don't come back." And she said, "I was so humiliated when I realized what a low point this was, that I was a mockery to him." Well, how is Doris doing for herself these days? Well, I did a little search this morning to make sure I had updated information. Pampered Chef now has 60,000 independent sales reps. They hold 1 million kit shows per year. And Pampered Chef, she eventually sold it out to who all but little businessman by the name of Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. You will have moments when you're stuck. And things happen, but it certainly does not mean the end for you. Do not let it get you down. Just one more example from my own life. I live in northern Iowa in a small town called Algona, and I had done a variety of positions that would lead me to the point where I eventually wanted to start my own business, doing workplace training, and maybe hope to get into speak into a conference at some day. And so 10 years ago, I created a brochure on my home computer and just sent out to local companies within our small town of Algona, saying I could do training on communication skills or on having difficult conversations in the workplace or on supervisory skills, and was hoping to get my foot in the door to work with just some of these local businesses, much less get into Des Moines and speak at a statewide conference. And there was one company locally that it is a large company based in our town. It's a very large company, and it has about 150 employees. And I thought, this would be perfect. And I knew they hired outside trainers. So I had been calling their training coordinator, hoping to get in just to have a meeting. She would not give me a meeting, and I just kind of kept sending her things and calling. And finally she said, "Okay, let's meet, 9 o'clock Thursday morning or whatever." So the morning before the meeting, I said to my husband, "This is it. This thing is really going to take off now because I'm going to get my foot in the door. I finally have a meeting with this woman." Well, I went to the meeting, and I went to hand her, I had made a special flyer just for her, to their company and their needs. And I went to hand it to her in the meeting, and she basically gave me the sign of, talk to hand with the hand facing me, like she wouldn't accept my brochure. She was mistaken, obviously. So I handed her the brochure again, and again she gave me the sign, the talk to the hand, that she wouldn't take the brochure. And she had no interest in what I was doing. And I went home and bawled like a baby to my husband. She was so mean to me, and I'm going to give this up, and I'm never going to do this. And the next day I got back up and got on the phone and started calling other businesses. And as you know, the end of the story, my business did take off, and now I work with that company among many others in major Midwestern cities and really around the nation at this point. But I think, what if I had let that particular moment take me down? My life changed dramatically because of the fact I was willing to move forward. Another way of seeing this forgive me for any of you animal lovers, there's a fable, so not real, but it's kind of a sad story if you're an animal lover, that has a good point about a donkey. A man had an old donkey. It was old and withered, and he fell down into an empty well on their farm, and he was deep down into the well. And the farmer was like, I don't know how I'm going to get him out of here. And so he decided it would be so much work that maybe the most human common sense thing would be just to make the well that the animal's burial ground. So he called his neighbors and said, let's everybody gather around and we're going to shovel in dirt on top of the donkey and just cover him up, and at least that way when the well is filled, excuse me, no one else will be able to be hurt by falling in. So they did, and they all gathered and they were shoveling dirt into the hole and shoveling, and the donkey was kicking and braying, and eventually the donkey stopped making noise and they knew that he had met his demise. And they continued shoveling, and finally the farmer said, hey folks, let's take a break, you guys get a drink of water, and I'm going to peer down into the well and see how much farther we have to shovel to get it up to the top level. And as he looked down, what did he see? Well, there an old donkey standing on top of all of the dirt that the man had shoveled. Rather than letting those shovels of dirt cover him up, each time he would shake off the dirt and use that dirt to take him up, to step on it and take him up to the next level. He would shake it off, use that dirt, and step up to the next level. And I think what a great analogy that is. You know, when dirt comes at you, you can either let it cover you up, or say, you know what, I'm going to shake this off and help me be stronger, wiser, more creative, more able than ever before, and move up. Right, we need to get to our last point here. And this one, I have a question for you again. I'd like you to ask you to type in your answer if you would be so kind. And the question that I'd like you to answer, I need to pull it up here so I get it exactly. Please, if you'd be so kind, type in to Shannon and to Stacy the answer to this question. I know I would be better mentally and physically prepared for work if what? Again, I'll repeat it. Complete this statement. I know that I would be better mentally and physically prepared for work if what? If you'd please type in the answer to the question one last time. I know I would be better mentally and physically prepared for work if what? All right, the last point I want to get at here is knowing what you need to be at your best. If you're familiar with the term emotional intelligence, there's many different components of emotional intelligence, and one of the main ones is this idea of self-awareness to yourself, to have awareness of what is it that energizes me, what are the type of work tasks that energize me, what are the type of work tasks that drain me, what type of people that when I'm around them, they give me a lot of energy. And what are people in my life, when I'm around them, they just tend to drain me. You know, what kind of people, is there a certain personality type that really pushes my buttons, you know, a whiner or a complainer, and have that awareness so when you see that person coming down the hall, you can say to yourself, okay, keep calm. You know, this is a personality type that pushes your buttons. Also to know when you have time off away from work and you get a few minutes to have some refreshing time to say, what is it that truly is going to refresh me and rejuvenate me during this time, as opposed to maybe sitting in front of the TV mindlessly flipping channels and you're just kind of wiped out and it really doesn't do any good toward rejuvenation. So related to that, I think a good starting point is to ask that question. I know I would be better mentally and physically prepared for work if what? And I'm going to ask Shannon or Stacy to chime in right now and see if they can give us any answers that any of you women have chimed in. We'd love to hear that. I think it's a good starting point.
A lot of answers everyone is saying is if they got more sleep, if they exercised, ate better, was more organized and prepared that day, if everyone in my group was pulling their own weight and holding themselves personally accountable, if I had more time to get work done and to prepare, more sleep.
Someone wants a personal assistant, a stylist, chef, and a chauffeur. Whoa.
I want that too. Who is that? If she can afford that, I'd be happy to have her send me those items as well.
Well, they can get by. So, yeah, definitely sleep. Not fight the same battles every day. Whoa. Ooh, took time to journal in the morning. Oh, if our boss valued us. Whoa, okay. Mute myself now.
Okay. Thank you for typing those things in. And I want to say, there's never instant answers, like if my boss appreciated me more. But I think it's a good starting point to see what you wrote in there. Do I have any control over changing those things? Do I have any control whatsoever in getting more sleep at night, or in journal writing in the morning, or in somehow getting the point to my boss that I need appreciation, or maybe I need to consider a different job where I will have a supervisor who appreciates me? I just think that self-awareness is critical to know what you need to be at your best. Two tidbits of wisdom that I want to share with you is, first of all, to recognize the significant role, and if you stated this, that healthy foods, exercise, and sleep play in maintaining mental, physical, and emotional strength. Two quick ditties from Shawneकर. As you can know, figured out, I'm a huge fan of his. I think his research is very solid. He shares in his book, Before Happiness, related to this. The first one is in regards to healthy foods. He shares, I think it was Columbia Business School, did a study where they analyzed parole board hearings, where the prisoner goes before the parole board hoping to get parole, be granted parole. And so they analyzed cases in which the facts of the case were essentially identical. You had the same type of crime. They had the same amount of months or years in jail. They had the same type of behavior in prison, all of that. And yet they found that when there was one differentiating factor, 20% of the time parole was granted, and in the other case, 60% of the time parole was granted to the person, even though the facts of the case were identical. The one distinguishing factor, and this will be helpful if any of you land in the big house. I know I'm hoping to use this information myself someday if I land in the big house. The one distinguishing factor was when the parole board heard their case, lunch or after lunch. They found that when these prisoners went before the parole board, the parole board was hungry right before lunch. Their energy was draining. They hadn't had snacks, hadn't had nutrition. They were getting a little tired. They didn't have that injection. They tended to focus on the negative of the case and only granted parole 20% of the time. After lunch, their tummies were full. They were rejuvenated. They were refreshed. They'd had a little break. They granted parole then 6% of the time in the identical type of cases. How alarming is that? I think, anytime we say, well, gosh, to lose weight or become more fit, I'm going to cut out meals and snacks. Well, bad idea unless you want to be in a bad mood and notice all the negatives going around you in your life. To have some healthy snacks, like cheese and peanuts or protein bars or yogurt, things that are really going to rejuvenate you. The other one was sleep, and that's another one that Shawneकर shares in Before Happiness, the power of having sleep in your life, where they did studies where people memorized 3 lists of words, one being a group of positive words that had positive connotations, a list of neutral words, neither positive or negative, and memorized as well a list of negative words. And said that if someone gets 7-8 hours of sleep, they remember about the same number of words in each list. However, if a person loses a night of sleep, the amount of negative words that they remember stays the same, and the neutral words, but their ability to remember positive words after a lack of sleep drops dramatically. I don't have the figure in front, but like 58% or something, drops dramatically. The less sleep you have, the less likely you are to see the positives in your life. A couple other points I want to make. If you have not looked up Amy Cuddy, she's one of the best, most often viewed TED Talks on power poses. That is amazing to even recognize the role that our body language, by standing and sitting with a firm, confident posture, what the difference that they can do. She is showing there the Wonder Woman pose, which is one of the power poses they identified in their research. Standing like that for 2 minutes. And again, you probably want to do this in private, not in the middle of, the whole court offices. But in 2 minutes of standing in that pose, they found when they swab mouth before and after, actually increased the person's testosterone level. They're bold, can do I am woman, hear me roar type of hormone, and increase their cortisol level, their stress hormone. 2 minutes. Likewise, 2 minutes in a passive pose, kind of leaning down into yourself, kind of like someone shy or scared would do, increase the stress hormone and decrease their testosterone level. So even think about that, how you sit during the day, how you walk during the day. I also want to recognize when you're getting grumpy. We had a situation several years in a row, my husband Chris and I and our 3, at that time, teenage sons would take a week and travel down to the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri and spend a week on the lake there in the summer in a 2-bedroom condo. Again, my husband and at that time 3 teenage sons and myself in the condo. There's a lot of testosterone in the condo. And I remember the one year vividly. My husband remembers it as well. I woke up the 4th morning of vacation to my beloved husband and said, I take somebody's head off this morning. I take somebody's head off. And he what? And for 3 days, we have done the guy things. We've done the jet skis, we've done the go-karts, we've done fishing, we've done the video game stores. I said, there are outlet malls 1 mile that way, and I have not stepped my foot in them. And he dingled the car keys and said, go have some fun. We'll see you later. Now, 2 years ago, I'm not kidding you, when I was a young mom, I would have said, that is so selfish. How dare you insist in the middle of a family vacation to have time for yourself? But I see it very differently now. I would, as a wife, as a mom, as a professional woman, I have some responsibilities when I'm getting grumpy, not to say, well, I'm getting grumpy, you all are going to pay. I'm going to make everyone around me miserable today. But instead say, I am feeling grumpy. What is that I need? Do I need a good night's sleep tonight? Do I need to get someone to help me with these kids in the evening a little bit? Do I need to, get out and get some exercise, or do I need to have some quiet time? What is it that truly that I need? And I would have to say here that a massage is always a good thing, always. All right, well, I am watching my time a little bit, so I will leave you with a couple things here, and then we'll start wrapping down. This is a little take-home assignment. Just did this with a group of college kids on Tuesday. They thought it was very helpful, and I'd encourage you to consider doing this at some point. What you do sometime when you have a few minutes of quiet, you take a piece of paper and you jot down 2 boxes. You draw 2 boxes. And one, you write the words best self. In the other, you write the words worst self. And in the best self box, you jot down what are some times recently when I felt I was really at my best. My personality was on, I was patient, I was creative, I was intelligent, I was witty, I was all of those good things that I wanted to be. What are some examples of those times? You jot down when it was. Then you go to the worst self box and you do the same. What are some times recently when I was at my worst? I'm embarrassed by how I behaved that day. Jot down examples of times when that happened. Then you look at the best self box and you look at those incidences and see what these things have in common. What are the types of people, events, and situations that seem to bring out the best in me? And worst self box, what are the type of people, events, and situations that seem to bring out the worst in me? And I've had times when I've done this activity through the years where I've went, oh my gosh, I am choosing to spend time in my free time with a friend who brings out the worst in me, and I didn't even know that. She brings out the worst in me. She's always in that box. And times when I was between positions of careers, said, what brings out the best in me? Wow, I'm my best when I'm helping others be best. Perhaps that's something that I should pursue. All right, well, I'm going to wind down here, do last little clicks, save that for another time. We're going to close now, but I want you to take a moment and we'll ask any questions or comments or one point you remember from the webinar if you want to type that in. We'll do that for a couple minutes, and then I just have a very brief closing quote. Shannon, do you have any questions or comments before I do my closing quote, or should I do my closing quote first?
Do your quote, Brenda.
We shall. All right, ladies, a couple closing thoughts here. For Eleanor Roosevelt, we do have to become heroes overnight, just a step at a time, meeting each thing that comes up, see it as not dreadful as it appeared, discover we have the strength to stand down. And this adapted from Courtney Martin's Perfect Girl, Starving Daughters. What's a woman, a Wonder Woman? A sense of humor, a terror adventure, it's a glow. Grab on to openness, intelligence, presence, humility, appetite, intuition, smart comebacks. A storyteller, she's a doctor, a woman confident in her many skills and abilities, a mother, a great grandmother, a woman juggling her many responsibilities, knowing that it's okay and absolutely healthy to achieve perfection. A fighter courageously battling the challenge of her lifetime. A woman with a loving, grateful heart. A woman who realizes just how amazing she truly is. And if you wonder, where am I going to find a Wonder Woman like that? Oh, just look in the mirror, because that's exactly who you are. Juggling your responsibilities, knowing it's not going to be perfect, but that you're doing the best that you can and doing way better than I'm sure you think that you are. So I'll turn it over to you, Shannon. Shannon and Stacy, any questions or comments from anyone that we want to hear from?
Yeah, throw your comments and questions in the chat box. While we're waiting for those, I just want to mention, and thanks, Heather, for your request, we will have a copy of this presentation available along with the recording. You probably won't see that on the Energetic Women or Midwest Energy site until tomorrow. We will be sending out a link to the recording today for everyone who did register for the webinar. In the email will also be a link for feedback. Please, please, please take 3 minutes and provide feedback on today's content and Brenda. And if you do, when you get all the way to the end of the evaluation and you hit enter, on the thank you page, Brenda has been so kind as to look through all of her articles, and she's provided a really inspiring article that kind of resonates with today's topic. So if you fill out the evaluation, you'll get a link to that article. So please do that. And like I said, we'll have that copy of the presentation on the website probably tomorrow. But if you registered for the webinar, we'll have a link to the recording to you sooner rather than later. One person mentioned that what resonated for them today was the comment that I threw in the chat box, which was, "Don't believe everything you think." And that was actually on a bumper sticker that I saw this morning on the way to work. And I love it because sometimes you see the don't believe everything you read, but really, don't believe everything you think. What do you think about that bumper sticker, Brenda?
That's amazing, and I've never seen that one. You know, that's the reality. Our thoughts will throw all sorts of stuff at us that just isn't true. And I think you need to do that, stop that for yourself. And I also encourage you to teach your children, your grandchildren, or those you have access to in your life, that they shouldn't believe every thought that pops into their mind, because our mind is just that way. But to question that validity of that, I love that.
Person mentioned that they're going to list 3 things for which they're grateful today. You could do grateful or just 3 positive things that are 3 happy thoughts. Put it on your calendar. That's a great idea, Margaret. Add a note on your calendar, a task, to just remember to do that. Here's a question. Brenda, do you have any advice if you know someone who is stuck in their negative moment on how to help them?
For one, you could start by sharing with them some of what we talked about, is how that's not fair to themselves to get stuck in that moment, that we all have mistakes. Every single woman, I guess there's 200 plus women listening to this right now. There is not one woman in here who has not had a major mistake in her life. So I would encourage you, working her to that way as well. Consider counseling. working with a mentor or someone in some way, a counseling, a pastor, whatever she's comfortable with, to work past that and realize those thoughts, barriers. If you email me afterwards, I want to give you the name of a book. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, that talks about Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns. Look up what he has done, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but he has a couple great books on learning to fight back against those thoughts that are not realistic. One is the Feeling Good book, and one is the Feeling Good Handbook, and I recommend the Feeling Good Handbook by Dr. David Burns. Really teaches you how to fight back against those thoughts.
Definitely. Well, someone also mentioned that they're going to take their 3 things and they're going to post it on their whiteboard. And that's a great way to just let other folks know and have them ask, well, what are those 3 things on your whiteboard? And keep the conversation going. A great read for positive thought training, The Power of Consistency by Weldon Long. Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that, Heather. That's The Power of Consistency by Weldon Long. You know what? We're out of time today. Thank you so much, Brenda, for your time and your wonderful wisdom. Thank you to DTE Energy for sponsoring today's webinar. We really do appreciate our sponsors. And DTE Energy, you have been a great partner of MEA. And, of course, thank you to everyone today who took time out of their busy, busy days and set their glass of water down to join us. Stacey? Thank you as well. She's staring at me. All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and end.
Thanks, everybody.
It's
been my honor to be with you. So thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Wonderful day, everyone. Thanks.